London does not fall in silence. It falls through bells, sirens, shattered stone, and the sudden disappearance of certainty. London Has Fallen turns one of the world's most recognizable capitals into a compressed battlefield, but behind its explosions is a carefully financed sequel designed to convert franchise familiarity into international box office value. Released in 2016, the story follows United States Secret Service agent Mike Banning as he accompanies President Benjamin Asher to the funeral of the British Prime Minister. The gathering draws major world leaders into one city, creating a ceremonial moment that is also an irresistible security target. A coordinated attack transforms London into chaos, leaving Banning responsible for keeping the president alive while institutions collapse around them. Directed by Babak Najafi and led by Gerard, Butler, Aaron Eckhart, and Morgan Freeman, the film was built as the second chapter of the Fallen franchise. Its approximate production budget of $60 million represented substantial investor risk, but the first film had already demonstrated audience demand for a hard, direct action formula built around loyalty, siege, and political survival. The creative gamble was not subtlety. It was scale. The production promised recognizable landmarks, coordinated urban destruction, digital spectacle, close-quarters combat, and a hero who could function when formal systems failed. The emotional product was simple. One highly trained protector would remain dependable. The first half begins by establishing two forms of preparation. In Pakistan, arms dealer Amir Barkawi attends a family celebration while Western intelligence prepares a drone strike. In Washington, Banning prepares for fatherhood while considering resignation from the Secret Service. One man responds to loss by building revenge. The other responds to responsibility by imagining a safer life. When the British Prime Minister dies unexpectedly, global leaders travel to London with limited planning time. This compressed schedule operates like a high-risk corporate launch. Security teams must coordinate routes, vehicles, communications, medical support and diplomatic protocol without the long testing period normally required for an event of this scale. The funeral is revealed as a trap. Attackers disguised as police officers, guards, and emergency personnel exploit the trust attached to uniforms. Landmarks are bombed, motorcades are ambushed, and several heads of government are killed. The pacing creates immediate emotional investment because the audience watches systems fail in rapid sequence rather than through a slow investigation. Banning moves the president from vehicle to vehicle, continuously abandoning plans that no longer match reality. This is the film's startup logic. The original security architecture is the prototype, the coordinated attack is the stress test. Once the prototype fails, Banning survives through fast iteration, local information, and decisive action. The first half converts ceremony into pursuit, narrowing the story to one question: can a single protector keep the president alive? The second half changes the film from public catastrophe into personal extraction. Banning and Asher move through the underground and try to reach a protected intelligence location. Their brief moments of quiet are valuable because the action has already established that any apparent safety may be temporary. The safe house is compromised from within, revealing that the attackers have purchased information and loyalty. This betrayal expands the threat beyond weapons. Security systems depend on trust, and trust becomes dangerous when access can be monetized. The film repeatedly suggests that the most expensive walls are useless when the enemy already possesses the key. Asher is captured and taken to a construction site where the terrorists plan to broadcast his execution. The event is designed as psychological warfare rather than simple murder. A public killing would convert one hostage into global fear, online attention, and symbolic victory. Banning joins a small special forces team and enters the hostile zone through a long, aggressive street assault. He eventually reaches the president, defeats Barkawi's son Cameron, and escapes before the building is destroyed. At the same time, intelligence officials identify the leak and trace Barkawi's communications. The final drone strike completes the revenge cycle, while Banning returns home to his family. The payoff is efficient. The president survives, the traitor is exposed, the terrorist network is punished, and the protector remains in service. The emotional product market fit is not political complexity. It is restored control after prolonged helplessness. Mike Banning's psychology is built around hyper-responsibility. He does not merely perform a job, he interprets another person's survival as a personal obligation. This produces courage, but it also makes ordinary life difficult. Fatherhood represents a future where care must be expressed through presence, patience, and vulnerability rather than constant combat readiness. His behavior during the attack reflects trained automaticity. Under extreme stress, people often lose access to complex reasoning and rely on deeply practiced patterns. Movement, threat recognition and protective positioning have become procedural memory, reducing the time between perception and action. President Asher operates under a different pressure. He must accept guidance while remaining conscious that his capture carries national consequences. Leadership here requires temporary surrender of control. The president survives not by commanding every decision, but by trusting the person with the strongest local expertise. Barkawi represents the psychology of retaliatory identity. The drone strike kills members of his family, and grief becomes fused with purpose, status, and revenge. The film does not explore this trauma deeply, but it clearly shows how loss can be converted into a business model of violence. Behavioral economics also explains the insider betrayal. Access, money, and ideology can outweigh distant institutional loyalty when an individual believes the private reward is immediate and the risk of detection is manageable. The film's moral framework is simple, but its strongest psychological idea is useful. Systems fail when personal incentives quietly separate from public duty. The financial autopsy begins with an approximate production budget of $60 million. That figure placed the sequel below the cost of many effects-heavy studio blockbusters while still demanding expensive action units, international crews, stars, visual effects, military equipment, sets and a worldwide marketing campaign. The film earned approximately $205.8 million at the global box office. About $62.5 million came from the domestic market, while roughly $143.2 million came internationally. That geographic split is strategically important because nearly 70% of theatrical revenue was generated outside the domestic market. Box office gross is not profit. Cinemas retain a portion of ticket revenue, distributors recover marketing and release costs, and financiers, producers, and talent may receive contractual shares. A $60 million negative cost can therefore require far more than $60 million in worldwide ticket sales before the full enterprise reaches break-even. Even with those deductions, the gross demonstrated that the franchise had strong international demand. The sequel earned more worldwide than its predecessor, despite receiving a weaker domestic total. The property lost strength in one region while increasing total value through foreign expansion. Home entertainment, television licensing, streaming rights and later franchise activity extended the revenue window. From an EBITDA perspective, the most valuable outcome was not only one film's theatrical performance. It was proof that the fallen name, Gerard Butler's action identity and the central protector-president relationship could support another sequel and a longer commercial life cycle. The production belongs to a digital action era in which physical photography and computer-generated destruction are tightly combined. Cinematographer Ed Wild used Red Epic Dragon cameras with late Summilux and Angenieu's Optimo lenses. This package offered high-resolution digital capture, flexible low-light performance and the ability to move quickly between controlled sets and aggressive handheld action. Digital cameras reduced the delay between photography and review. Crews could review material quickly and identify missing coverage before expensive sets or stunt units were released. In production finance, faster information reduces the risk of discovering a problem after the opportunity to correct it has disappeared. The film's London is partly photographed, partly reconstructed, and partly simulated. New Boyana Film Studios in Sofia provided major production infrastructure, while visual effects teams extended environments, replaced skylines, created landmark destruction and integrated vehicles, smoke, debris, and crowds. The technology is most visible when famous architecture is damaged. Such images require digital modeling, match moving, compositing, lighting simulation and layers of effects animation. The audience must recognize the landmark immediately, yet believe that it occupies the same photographic space as live performers. The extended street assault near the climax uses long-take design to preserve momentum and geography. Even when hidden edits and visual assistants are involved, the sequence depends on rehearsal, camera stabilization, precise squib timing and coordinated movement. Innovation here is not one machine. It is the workflow that allows practical action, digital repair, and editorial rhythm to appear as one continuous event. Production management had to sell the illusion that a major Western capital was collapsing while protecting real locations, schedules, and public infrastructure. That challenge required multiple shooting units, controlled streets, sound stages, visual effects plates, and replicas of spaces that could not be damaged or occupied for long periods. Bulgaria offered studio capacity, experienced crews, and cost advantages. New Boyana could support large builds, vehicle work, weapons effects and urban environments while allowing departments greater control than central London would permit. Location choice therefore became a financial instrument, balancing authenticity against labor, access, tax structures, and logistical predictability. The cast also created scheduling risk. A sequel requires returning stars, and their availability affects the entire production calendar. Scenes involving the returning stars had to preserve performance continuity across different environments and production periods. Action schedules are especially sensitive because one delay spreads across many departments. A rain change can affect cameras, stunt safety, wardrobe continuity, explosives, traffic control, and visual effects reference photography. Time equals capital because every additional day extends salaries, rentals, insurance, accommodation, and post-production pressure. The project demonstrates the difference between visible and invisible scale. The audience sees a few characters running through a city. The production manager sees permits, transport, extras, armorers, stunt coordinators, medics, digital asset teams, catering, and hundreds of people whose timing must intersect. The hero survives through improvisation, but the film itself could only survive through planning. The film uses real concerns about terrorism, leadership security, and urban vulnerability, but its scenario is designed as action fantasy rather than a realistic security forecast. A funeral attended by many world leaders would involve extensive advanced coordination, layered intelligence, airspace control, route protection, and local national cooperation far beyond what the story has time to present. The attackers achieve success by infiltrating police, ambulance, and security systems on an enormous scale. Insider threats are a genuine security concern because trusted access can bypass physical barriers. However, recruiting and coordinating so many armed participants without creating detectable communications, financial or behavioral signals would be extraordinarily difficult. The destruction of multiple landmarks is also dramatically compressed. Coordinated attacks can overwhelm emergency response, but the film presents near-perfect timing across complex sites while allowing the central characters to move through the city with unusual freedom. Real urban disaster produces confusion, blocked roads, and incomplete information that would slow both sides. Banning's close-quarters skills are plausible in principle, but his endurance exceeds ordinary human performance. Repeated crashes, gunfights, running, blunt force trauma, and sleep deprivation would degrade balance, hearing, fine motor control, and judgment. Cinema protects the hero's operational capacity because the narrative depends on continuous forward movement. The most credible idea is psychological. The planned execution is intended for global broadcast because modern violence often seeks an audience. The film understands that terrorism targets perception as much as infrastructure. Its historical and scientific accuracy is uneven, but its communication logic is clear. Fear becomes more valuable when millions of people can witness it simultaneously. The cinematography builds tension through contrast between ceremonial order and urban fragmentation. The early funeral preparations use composed frames, polished vehicles, and formal architecture. Once the attack begins, the camera becomes more mobile, sightlines narrow, and the visual world loses stability. London landmarks function as both geography and emotional shorthand. Viewers recognize bridges, government buildings, and public spaces before the story explains them. This recognition produces efficient spectacle because destroying a familiar image carries more emotional value than destroying an anonymous structure. Ed Wild's lens choices support different kinds of pressure. Wider lenses place Banning and Asher inside threatening environments, allowing danger to enter from the edges. Longer lenses compress vehicles, crowds, and gunmen, making safe distance appear smaller. Handheld movement communicates uncertainty, steadier frames suggest regained control. The color design leans toward cool grays, blue shadows, military greens, and the orange interruption of fire. Smoke and atmospheric debris reduce depth, allowing digital additions to blend with photographed material while creating a city that feels physically contaminated by the attack. The long assault sequence is the visual centerpiece because it preserves spatial cause and effect. The audience can observe the team advancing, taking cover and losing members without constant interruption. This creates cinematic ROI. One carefully engineered passage delivers choreography, tension, character competence, and production value at the same time. Sound design turns the city into an invisible threat network. Helicopter blades, automatic weapons, collapsing masonry, radio commands, alarms, and distant explosions continue beyond the frame, suggesting that the crisis is always larger than the camera can show. Dynamic contrast is essential. Quieter dialogue in tunnels or protected rooms allows small sounds such as breathing, footsteps, and radio interference to carry suspense. When violence returns, the sudden increase in volume makes the attack feel physically invasive rather than merely visual. Weapons are differentiated through rhythm and acoustic weight. A pistol communicates proximity and personal danger. Automatic fire creates sustained pressure. Explosions use low-frequency energy to make the theater itself feel unstable. Debris and glass extend each impact after the initial blast, preventing destruction from sounding like a single clean event. Trevor Morris's score combines orchestral action language with electronic pulse. Brass and percussion reinforce duty and forward motion, while lower electronic textures support surveillance, conspiracy, and technological threat. The music rarely asks the audience to question the mission. It is designed to maintain momentum and emotional certainty. Dialogue remains the human anchor inside the mix. Banning's instructions, Asher's responses, and radio intelligence must remain understandable even when effects are dense. If the audience cannot follow objectives during expensive spectacle, the production value loses narrative return. The marketing campaign sold continuity first. Audiences who recognized the earlier White House siege were offered a larger arena, a returning hero, and a title that communicated the premise instantly. The franchise name reduced consumer uncertainty because viewers already understood the tone, central relationship, and promise of survival. Trailers emphasized landmark destruction, international leaders, betrayal, and Gerard Butler's physical confidence. This was efficient audience targeting. The campaign did not need to explain complex ideology. It needed to show that the familiar protector would face a threat bigger than the one before. The March release positioned the film outside the most expensive summer competition while still giving it access to a wide theatrical footprint. It opened in roughly 3,490 domestic cinemas, converting awareness into immediate availability. The domestic opening weekend reached about $21.6 million. That result represented approximately one-third of its final domestic total, showing that franchise recognition created a strong initial audience but that long-term domestic momentum was limited. International performance carried more of the financial result. Audience analytics would have examined regional grosses, demographic response, trailer engagement, television placement, and franchise awareness. The worldwide split showed that the property had become an exportable action brand. Its future value depended less on critical prestige than on delivering a simple emotional experience that traveled efficiently across languages and markets. Critical reception was generally negative. Reviewers frequently attacked the screenplay, politics, visual effects, and treatment of violence. Metacritic recorded a score of 28 from 35 critics, demonstrating that professional approval was not the engine of the film's commercial performance. Audience response was more forgiving because the film delivers what its core market expects: fast escalation, recognizable stars, tactical movement, and a hero whose loyalty remains absolute. This difference illustrates how critics and consumers can evaluate separate products while watching the same movie. One group may seek complexity and originality, another may seek intensity and dependable genre satisfaction. The film did not become an awards contender, but it strengthened the franchise's commercial case. Its worldwide gross exceeded that of the first chapter, largely because international revenue grew dramatically. That result encouraged the production of a third film, proving that financial legacy can continue even when cultural prestige is limited. The sequel also reflects the mid-2010s action market, when digitally damaged cities, surveillance imagery, and global terrorism were common cinematic languages. Some elements have aged quickly, especially the simplified villainy and uneven computer-generated destruction. Other elements remain effective, including Butler's physical commitment and the sustained street assault. Its legacy is therefore industrial rather than revolutionary. It did not reinvent action cinema, but it showed how a mid-budget franchise could survive by controlling costs, using international production infrastructure and depending on overseas demand. That controlled, mid-budget path became commercially valuable. The film's deepest harmony is found where art, technology, and capital serve one clear emotional promise. The art is the relationship between a protector and the leader he refuses to abandon. The technology is the digital camera system, stunt coordination, sound design, and visual effects pipeline that converts controlled production spaces into a collapsing capital. The capital is the $60 million investment placed behind an established but still developing global brand. Its financial lesson is that worldwide demand can matter more than domestic dominance. Nearly 70% of the theatrical gross came from international markets, proving that direct physical storytelling and recognizable political imagery can cross borders even when dialogue and ideology remain culturally specific. Its psychological lesson concerns reliability. Governments, vehicles, communications, and safe houses all fail. Banning remains valuable because he continues to observe, decide, and act under pressure. The character is exaggerated, but the fantasy answers a real human desire. When systems become confusing, we want to believe that someone competent will not leave. The movie is loud, simplified and sometimes visually uneven. Yet it understands the commercial power of clarity. The hero has one duty. The president has one urgent need. The audience has one question. Every chase, gunshot and explosion pushes toward the answer. As a piece of cinema business, it is an education in franchise extension, international ROI, digital production and market positioning. As entertainment, it is a 99-minute machine designed to replace uncertainty with momentum. The city may fall, but the product succeeds by convincing us that duty can remain standing. If you found this deep dive meaningful, my literature-loving friends, consider liking and subscribing so we can keep decoding the business and beauty of cinema together.